Hello, good evening, friends. How are you doing today? This is Peter Matthews with Economic and Social Justice, our live broadcast on YouTube on Thursday evenings from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. We welcome everyone to call in after 8:15 so that we can have a discussion with the public from 8:15 to at least 8:50, 10 minutes to 9, at which time we'll wrap up the show as well. I'd like to have everyone involved as much as possible. This is a very important issue. We have some guests coming on the line. They're going to be calling in about 8:20 or 8:15 themselves, 10 after 8. And they're going to be people who are from the Democratic Party, and went as delegates. They were elected as delegates from the Southern California area to go to Sacramento and meet at the party convention this past Saturday and Sunday. And the main purpose of the convention was to come up, of course, with a new party chair. There was to be a major election there, the new party chairperson of the California Democratic Party. And the campaign season had gone on for many months before that between Kimberly Ellis and Eric Bauman. A classic insider outsider, grassroots versus establishment candidate campaign, with Kimberly Ellis being the grassroots person, running without corporate money, with thousands of donations from small donors across the state, and actually meeting with people in the district, in the cities of the state, and also the small rural areas. She went all over the state. We actually got to see her here debate Eric Bauman. And Eric Bauman had the insider support of many of the establishment Democrats, including the various elected officials, and of course, other parts of the party, including lobbyists and interest groups. So it was a very interesting classic contest between the two. And we'll almost call it David versus Goliath. And this time the David was a woman, Kimberly Ellis. And yet David didn't win this time officially. She lost by 62 votes out of 3,000 votes cast. 62 votes. And our guests are going to talk about the details of it because they were right there on the scene in Sacramento when the vote counting took place. At this time, both camps are, I know Kimberly Ellis has not conceded yet, and both camps have agreed to have not a recount because that's not allowed by the party rules, but instead to have an audit. It's very similar to a recount, an audit, to make sure that every vote was cast legally and properly by people who are actually credentialed. And they're going to go through all of that. They're doing it all day Tuesday. Now, this is Wednesday now. It may take another day or so to finish it, to see if indeed the race was so close that less than 0.5% actually determined the outcome. We have to make sure that it was accurate because many people on the progressive side, non-corporate side of the Democratic Party, the Bernie Sanders inspired side actually, feel very disillusioned that it's possible they could have lost this election through some kind of malfeasance. And they want to get to the bottom of this to make sure there's no untoward action, any malfeasance, any cheating going on, and instead that there was a fair and open election for the party chair. Because this was an election between whether the party will go forward or go instead hang on to its old ways, basically, and be part of the establishment, work with corporations, basically compromise quite a bit with them, and not really fight for the common people as much as it used to back under President Roosevelt. The Democratic Party was a very progressive party in the New Deal coalition put together by President Roosevelt back in the 1930s to get us out of the Depression. It was made up of rural voters who are farmers in the South, white farmers and African-American farmers, made up of urban people who had migrated to the cities, African-American people who went to the cities to get work. They also joined the coalition. Roosevelt put them together with unions and union leaders, as well as other people and educators and upper middle class intellectuals, came together to form this New Deal coalition, which is the foundation and actual composition of the modern day Democratic Party. The question is, whose interest will this party serve once it's elected? And how will it actually organize itself within itself? Will it be transparent, open, progressive, representing the vast majority of the American voters and the vast majority of the Democratic voters in the state? Or will it be a top-down party led from the inside and from the top down with the people in power already and with the money and wealth and the interest group support, including special interest support, to drive the party forward? Two different directions, two different philosophical principles that were at stake here. And that was the symbolic election that took place. Was more than, it was practical and it was symbolic to ascertain which way the party would go. Would it go back to its roots, its progressive roots, and go back to the future to take America forward, to take the party forward, to take the state forward on behalf of the 99% of Americans and Californians who've been struggling, who want the American dream back? They want it back for themselves and for the whole country, instead of allowing the 1% to capture the dream and take it for themselves, as has been the case since the Great Recession, even a few years before that. The top 1% has captured 90% of the new income that was generated since the Great Recession. It's gone in their pockets, while the bottom 99% has very little income and wealth to share in. And as you know, the gap between rich, because as a result of that, the gap between rich and poor has grown to 350 to 1. The average CEO is making 350 times the amount of income as the average American worker. And this gap is not unsustainable. As the gap grows larger and larger, you can see we go right off the map. And we go off into oblivion, because then the upper crust of the gap will try to capture everything for themselves even more and give it to their children. And you'll have basically a civil conflict eventually. And we don't want that in America. We want to have a country that is has justice for all, that provides equal opportunity for all. And that would mean universal health care, free of individual charge, paid for by the collective, by the state, by the corporations, and the rich people who can afford to pay for the health care. The rest of us will pay for some of it as well. But we'll put it together in a progressive system of universal single-payer health care. It also means having universal tuition-free education from kindergarten all the way through university and college, as we used to have in California, by the way. From 1960 to 1980, we had, under the Master Plan for Higher Education, a college and university tuition-free education for any student to enter the college that was qualified, that studied hard, and went ahead and was able to go forward. They were able to take whatever course they wanted. In fact, Governor Pete Wilson, the former governor of California, went to UC Berkeley Law School at that time, and he paid $37 service fee. It wasn't tuition, it was tuition free. A $37 basically a processing fee, and the rest was tuition free for 3 years of law school, and he graduated and became a lawyer, a businessman, a senator, etc., a governor. Governor Schwarzenegger, an immigrant from Austria, at 20 years old, came to the United States of America, came to California, and saw Santa Monica College, a tuition-free college in Santa Monica, down here near Los Angeles. And that college was tuition-free, as all the other community colleges were across the state. I taught at Foothill College in Northern California, and my students, just as Governor Schwarzenegger himself, paid as a student only $6 for all 15 units of classes per semester. And for 2 full years, you go free of charge, and then transfer to the universities, Cal States and UCs, which were also tuition-free at a slightly little higher entrance rate. But it was something that was remarkable. One more example was Dr. Paul Garber, a friend of mine who lives down in La Jolla, a retired medical doctor, very successful. He actually went to UCLA Medical School back in the 1970s, graduated in 1979 or so, and he was able to come out of medical school with no debt, because he paid only $225 a quarter for 3 quarters in the year of medical school, meaning about $600, ladies and gentlemen, for medical school in California, all the way through several years of medical school. He came out with no debt whatsoever. He was able to go to work, helping to heal people as a doctor, helping to serve the society and make some good money as well, have a nice, successful home. That was the American dream for those folks. Why are we taking that away from our young people? That's what the Democratic Party should be going back to, is bringing back the American dream, an opportunity to realize the dream. That's what the progressive wing of the party is all about. And Kimberly Ellis was actually representing that. So let's see what happens with the final tally, the final actual audit of the vote, to see if all the votes were counted properly and what the numbers will come out to be once it's done. So we'll report to you next week when we come back on as well. I think we're going to have a phone call coming in here. People are starting to call in, and I invite everyone to call in at 562-234-3319. Call in at 562-234-3319, and we'll have questions from the audience. Actually, we got some of the folks who went to Sacramento who were there during this very unsettling experience of the California Democratic Party and the process that is selected as chairperson, and to make sure that the right chairperson was chosen. These folks are there firsthand, and we're going to have them call in pretty soon here. So as they're waiting for them to come on, for the phone to ring, we'll continue here a little bit. And I think it's actually important to ask the question, what is a political party? We're going to define that as we go along here. But we're getting a call coming in right now. Let's see who this is. Yes, good evening. You're on Economic and Social Justice with Peter Matthews, talking about, is the party rigged? Talking about the Democratic Party. And we're also going to talk about our revolution and what those folks have been doing in the state and throughout the nation. Who's this, please? Who's calling?
This is Yosh.
Oh, hello, Yosh. Can you hear me, sir?
You have 40 days.
Oh, no. This didn't quite work out. Can you hear? There we go. Yosh, can you hear?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Very
Thank
clear.
You.
You're very clear. Yes, please tell us what happened in Sacramento. What else you'd like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. I was one of 10 progressive elected elected in Assembly District 70 about 5 months ago, and the 10 of us went up with many of our fellow progressive supporters up to Sacramento this past weekend, and we cast our ballots for Kimberly Ellis, and we apparently fell a little bit short. We fell 62 votes short, which meant that if we could have switched or flipped 32 of those Bauman votes to Kimberly Ellis, then Kimberly Ellis would be the new chair of the Democratic Party. Unfortunately, while we're still in the audit and we don't know the final official results yet, but as progressives, we just have to keep plugging away. We're working against a lot of inertia, not only in California, but throughout the nation, and we can't get disheartened. We just have to keep plugging away. We came very close to winning the chair in California this year, and in 2 years, I think we might succeed.
Yes, very close, Yosh, given the odds. The fact is that many of the delegates are appointed by elected officials, and they're part of the establishment. They're backed by corporate America. And these delegates were going to vote for Eric Bauman regardless. And yet you folks, the progressive wing, the Bernie Sanders wing, got together on a grassroots level. You got elected yourselves from the various assembly districts and made it to Sacramento. And you had quite a delegation there, didn't you? So you ended up getting about 50% of the vote, which is quite amazing and quite wonderful.
Right.
We're still still not over. It's still not quite over yet, right? The audit has to be over first before we could actually know what happened.
Right. Kimberly Ellis has not conceded. We suspect that there might be some irregularities, and the rules are very convoluted, and it's very easy to slip up. For instance, if you go there as a delegate or an elected official, and then you decide, well, I can't stay until Saturday, I'm going to have a proxy vote in my favor or on my behalf. Well, if that proxy was improperly named, then that proxy's vote should be thrown away, or disqualified. And so we're waiting for that verification and that audit. And
so the audit, in other words, the audit it's much more than just it's not even there's not really an official recount, but it's an audit to see whether the procedure was done properly as well, right? Like you just said, proxy, the procedure of having proxies nominated, et cetera. All those technicalities very important in the process.
Right, that is correct.
That the rules are followed.
I guess the first hurdle is if you've signed your name and claim that you are a legitimate voter as either elected official or some other delegate, then the first thing will be to check the various signatures, the signature from the day that you registered on Friday or Saturday this past weekend, and also double check your signature against the registrar of voters.
Yes.
And so that's one of the very basic steps in this particular audit. Right.
So tell us a bit about the inspiration of the Our Revolution, and also Bernie Sanders himself, who inspired Our Revolution, has been a part of that, I suppose. How did that inspire this movement to try to make the Democratic Party more progressive in California by having grassroots folks run on a progressive platform?
Well, Bernie Sanders was a great inspiration. Since 1968, when I worked for the McCarthy campaign.
Oh, yes.
I've been an activist in the Free Tibet movement, in captive daughters, and fighting sex trafficking, and any number of other nonprofits. But this is the first time I guess it was a year ago that I finally got active in the Democratic Party by supporting Bernie Sanders, and I think that's true for many people. And now you see with the election of Trump, I guess it's an election of Trump. I guess that's pretty much official, even though I don't know that well, I think Trump was right in one respect. He suspected that there might have been some shenanigans in the voting, and he might be right in that regard. but we just have to keep plugging away. We understand that the cards are stacked, that there's a lot of inertia, that there's a lot of money sloshing around in the system, but people power has got to overcome all of those odds.
It has to, and it's not always easy. It's like climbing a very high mountain, but the 1,000-mile march begins with the first step. That's what the Chinese proverb says, right? And that's what you're doing right now. You've done more than one step. And here's the thing I want to talk a bit about, Yosh, also is when Bernie Sanders ran in the primaries against Hillary Clinton, there have been some revelations come out that it wasn't an entirely fair contest, was it, necessarily? Do you want to comment on that at all? The way it was treated, the way they were treated.
I mean, there were, a number of things that we felt that Debbie Wasserman Schultz had kind of stacked the cards in Hillary Clinton's favor.
She was the chair of the party at the time, right? Debbie Wasserman Schultz was the chair of the party.
Right. But, I want to go beyond the Democratic Party, and I want to point out Main Street media.
Okay.
You will recall that Main Street media kept insisting on reporting Hillary Clinton's superdelegates.
Yes.
And they kept saying, well, Clinton has an insurmountable lead. Look at all these thousands of superdelegates that she's got in her column already. Yes. And as you will recall, just on the eve of the California primary, the Associated Press came out with a big news flash saying Clinton wins the Democratic nomination because she has now captured enough superdelegates to put her over the top. So, if you're a Bernie Sanders voter or supporter, you don't need to go to the California polls tomorrow.
You may feel that, yeah. You may feel, I don't need to go. It's over. Yeah, game over.
The game is over.
Yeah.
Stay home.
And yet, Yosh, you need to point out, I think very well, that was so inaccurate because the superdelegates had not cast even one vote. They'd only verbally pledged to Hillary, supposedly. They had not cast a vote for Hillary. She had not won their votes yet until the convention, right? And yet the Associated Press said that she'd won these superdelegate votes, all the votes, including the superdelegates.
If I can share a little bit, If I could share a little bit of hearsay, I've not looked up the rules, but my understanding, I've been told that superdelegates are not supposed to vote on the first round. So, yet at the time of the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, they combined the superdelegate commitments to Clinton together with the actual primary votes.
Mm-hmm.
And so there were a number of states where Bernie Sanders had won, but in public, it looked like he lost that particular state, even though he won the primary, because they improperly added in the superdelegates from that state into the Clinton campaign or the totals.
So there was some of the irregularities such as that, but there was also some other egregious ones. For example, when the vice chair, I believe, of the party, Donna Brazile, who was a CNN commentator, she was a CNN analyst, actually was able to gain some of the questions, capture the questions that were going to be asked in the near future at the CNN town hall with Hillary and Bernie, and she gave Hillary Clinton those questions ahead of time. Am I right?
Right. That's apparently what happened. There were a lot of irregularities, and we don't think that it was a level playing field. And if it were, we're pretty confident that Bernie Sanders would have won both the nomination and would have won the presidential campaign as well.
No doubt.
I've spoken to a number of Trump voters who have told me that they would have voted for Bernie Sanders, but they voted for Trump instead.
Right. Don't go anywhere. I want to merge him with you.
Okay.
Looks like someone. Okay, Julian. Hello, is that you, Julian? Okay, good, Julian Berger. Good to have you on here. I wanted to let you know that Yoshi Yamanaka, who is a delegate also to the convention, is on the other line right now. So you guys can join each other and join me and anyone in the audience from this. So let's continue. Yoshi's talking about a few things. Let's continue, Yoshi, please. What were you saying?
Well, I was pretty much finished with those remarks regarding the presidential campaign and Trump, and the fact that many people believe that Bernie Sanders would have defeated Trump in a head-to-head contest.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, in the last half of the primary season, Bernie Sanders won 54% of the popular vote in those primary states that were held in the last half. Clinton had just had an insurmountable lead at the beginning in the early states when Bernie wasn't that well known, and the superdelegate number put her ahead in those early primary state accounting. So that was a problem, because in the end you saw that Bernie was surging toward the end, but it just wasn't enough, partly because it was not fairly handled. The whole race wasn't fair in terms of the two having an even competition. And the Democratic Party has to be called into question and has to be called to heel on this thing. What are you? You're a Democratic Party. We're a Democratic Party. The party, the name of it, comes from the word democracy, which means fairness, rule of law, equal opportunity, equal chance to win in a contest. And this is what the Democratic Party did not do this time, did it?
Perhaps a one man, one vote, that would help.
One person, one vote would help a lot. Why do we have superdelegates? Why do we have superdelegates? Yeah, why did the Democratic Party have about, I think, 15 or 20% of its appointed by party officials and bigwigs, as opposed to elected in the primaries? You know why the superdelegates?
The thing that's so bizarre about that is that they kept referring back. They might as well refer back to literally when, the Lord created the earth and everything. They kept referring back to 1972 and George McGovern running for president, and how basically he got one state, and the Democrats got hammered. And I'm thinking to myself,
in the general election. Yeah, in the general election.
Who cares? I mean, the bottom line is, first off, I'm a big fan of George McGovern.
I campaigned for him. I worked on his campaign in 72. That was my first presidential election. Go ahead.
Right. And so, as a matter of fact, the fact that he lost, I don't think was that big a deal. And the fact that he was running against Richard Nixon, who was probably one of the quickest people we ever had, running for president. But then they say that we can never have that again. We can never have that, avalanche again. And we have to have these super delegates. You think that Congress itself, they would turn around and say, we can get rid of these people because, we're secure in the fact being the majority party, we're going to win. Right. No, they don't want to do that. They want to keep doing that. And it's the most unfair thing. And how they're actually applied and say, well, I'm for Hillary Clinton, even for the state votes.
That's right. That's
what I mean? You got people that are coming out to, for instance, in California, which is one of the last states, you had people who were super delegates who were saying they were for Clinton even before the damn primary went off.
That's right. Not even one superdelegate vote had been cast.
They would be able to say nothing.
Yeah. So there was a lot of unfairness in the whole process of the Democratic Party primaries, and that has to be immediately fixed and addressed the right way. And yet, you went to Sacramento. Wait a minute. Both of you were in Sacramento. There was a proxy. The other one was an elected delegate on the progressive side, and yet you saw how the progressive candidate Kimberly Ellis was treated by the party establishment. Talk a bit about that, Julian, if you will. Yoshi's talked a bit about it already.
Yeah, the thing is that there's some sort of belief structure that basically says, that it's our party and you're not welcome. And that's the people that are basically part of the old guard, the people who support Eric Bauman and everything like that. And I think that's the wrong approach. And it also was used last year in 2016 in the presidential race. If people didn't want Bernie Sanders around, even though he had the bright ideas. And actually, I'm actually with the belief that that if Bernie Sanders had been the Democratic nominee, he would be the goddamn president.
Absolutely. I know all the polling because I got to talk on major television stations about that, and I predicted that if Bernie was nominated, he would beat Trump by at least 6 to 7 to 9 points. That was what all the polls were showing. He was way ahead compared to Hillary. Hillary was actually tied with Trump most of the time, and sometimes she fell behind him in the polls.
So getting back to basically the convention up there.
Yeah.
I actually had to drive up there and drive back. I carpooled up and carpooled back in order to save money because flying up there is really expensive.
Yes.
Okay? So we're talking about a minimum of $200, if not more.
Yeah.
So the thing is that my feeling is that, and of course at the end, you got people up there saying, oh, we have to be inclusive, we have to do this. But many people do not want that. A lot of the Kimberly Ellis people are
Bernie Sanders progressives, okay?
Yes.
And we need those people.
Absolutely.
The party needs to grow, and it needs to continue. Instead, they're saying, we don't want you. Why is, Kimberly running? Well, the reason why Kimberly's running, because it's a democratic process.
That's right. That's right.
And everybody has the right to run. This business is about they hand the baton off to some other loser.
We don't believe in crowning. We don't believe in crowning the nominees, like in the King George days. Hang on one second, gentlemen. We got one more call coming. Another call's coming, and don't go anywhere. I'm going to bring this call in with us, so we'll have 3 people on the line.
Okay, good.
This is great, and then we'll get back to Yosh again. Hello, good evening. Who's speaking, please?
Hello?
Welcome to Economic and Social Justice with Peter Matthews. Who's speaking, please?
Hi, sorry, can you say that again?
Yes, can you identify yourself? Tell us who is speaking on the line? Who's calling?
My name is Lucio Reveles, and I was at the convention in Sacramento.
Oh, very good. I'm glad you called. I'm very glad you called. Go ahead.
Matter of fact, Lucio is a friend of mine. He's in my assembly district.
Okay.
He's a fellow, a delegate from my AD.
Okay.
Which was stolen by our assembly member, Mike Gibson. Okay.
Let me, Julian, before you get to that, wait, excuse me 1 second, Julian. I want to just introduce you. Julian Berger is the president of the Progressive Democratic Club of the South Bay area, and also including Long Beach and Carson, San Pedro, those areas. They draw from that area. He's the president of the Progressive Democratic Club, and he was. Were you an alternative delegate, Julian, to the convention?
What happened?
Or proxy?
Actually, I was a proxy for a delegate that was a county Democratic Party member.
Okay, very good.
And I went through a long, laborious process to get that proxy.
Right. Let's have Lucio. Let me have Lucio tell the audience a bit about himself, and then we'll go back to Yosh, because I'm sure he's not quite done with what he was saying, and then we can continue that 3-way conversation and have more people come in. Go ahead, Lucio, please.
Hi.
Yes. How was your trip?
Hi.
How was your trip to Sacramento?
Hi, Lucio. Hey, Julian. What's up? Hey, yeah. Thank you, Peter, for doing this.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I'm Lucio Reveles, and I know Julian. We actually ran for ADEM in AD 64, like you mentioned. We ran for delegates, and actually we lost. There was a lot of shenanigans at our election. Room right next to our assembly district, and then forced his people through. He brought people there under a false pretext and got them in, and basically they kept us from electioneering. They kept us from having equal access to the voters. And we actually spoke about that at the Rules Committee on Friday at the convention. We had our appeal there, and the footage is up on Facebook. I can send you a link to it.
Excellent. Yeah.
But they basically said, yeah, we're not going to redo the election because, there wasn't a smoking gun, even though we submitted, lots of testimony from people who were there, who witnessed, the sheriffs and security guards.
Right.
And so on. So that's the Democratic Party for you.
And you see, I teach, as you know, I teach U.S. government politics. We have a section on democracy and elections. And one of the most important features is free and fair elections. Even in your assembly district, it has to be free and fair elections. That's not what you had, apparently. So and we didn't have it in Sacramento this time.
It's not what we had, and it's disappointing because their rules, in their rules for ADEM, they talk about, having fairness and having the right to do certain things, and it's in their bylaws how, in public meetings, all members of the party are supposed to have equal access. And in the rules, they say, well, then, we could have all these violations, and we presented it to them. They said, well, we didn't feel that the outcome would have changed, or it just wasn't enough. And it's really disappointing too, because if they would just step up and actually do a redo, these politicians and these representatives that want to buy these elections, they're going to think twice, before funneling a bunch of that money into trying to buy one of these elections.
Yes.
If the Democratic Party is actually going to take a position on this and actually stand up for the values that they purport to.
That's right.
This inclusion thing and this whole, fairness thing, which they always talk about, but when it comes time to back it up, they always try to go for.
Yes. What about it, Yosh? Yosh, what do you think about that?
Yes. Well, yeah, I know Lucio's situation quite well, and I was actually there at the Rules Committee when they were discussing all the pros and cons as to why they should sustain the let's see, there's a dispute resolution commission which bounds against
Mm-hmm.
Resolutions committee.
Compliance, yeah, compliance resolution commission.
Right. Okay.
They decided with the assembly member, and then but thanks to Lucio, who was going to point man, he went all the way to the rules committee, and then they basically said, "No, we're not going to deal with it." You know what I mean?
Yes.
And the reason being is because they think Mike Gibson's a pretty wonderful guy. Okay, and everything. They don't realize he's a corrupt elected official. Okay.
And it's really, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but it's about the rule of law. I mean, that should apply at every level, at the national level, the state, the local level, the party level, and the local assembly district nominating level, which you guys suffered from. The rule of law says the law must be applied evenly and equally to everyone in a democracy. The law has to be applied evenly. Looks to me like they didn't apply it evenly that time.
No, none of the people that were not on Mr. Gibson's slate, 7 women, 7 men, made it.
Mm-hmm.
None. Okay, all of his people made it, and then the person who was his protege, who was running for, who didn't come to the convention, by the way, amazingly, okay, who was running for the Newport spot, he got that. Anybody else was blown out.
Okay, so where do we, let's talk about this for a minute. Let's ask, where do we go from here with this at the state party? Because a lot can be done at the state level, am I right? In politics, in reforming things, in having our revolution, having real change at the state level.
That's one of the reasons why I think it was important that Kimberly Ellis ran for chair, okay, and hopefully that she would have won. Now, we're not done with this process yet, because what they've done, they've had 3 recounts where they've counted the ballots. They all come where they get 62 votes for Eric Belvin. Now what they're doing is important. They're matching up the names with the signature and the names on the ballots to the sign-in sheets to make sure there's no fraudulent voting.
Okay, that's very important.
About 500 ballots a day. There were 3,000 ballots cast.
Yes.
And the second day, I think they did that. They started yesterday. So we'll see what goes on and everything like that. But win or lose, I am so glad that Kimberly Ellis ran.
Yes.
And she did a fantastic job.
Really fantastic.
By 62 votes to Eric Belvin, who literally was eyeballing this seat for 8 years.
Yes, it's a remarkable feat that she and people like you accomplished. People like us who supported her accomplished a tremendous feat. We got to make sure if we lost this thing, it should be all fair and square, not cheating, not having procedural discrepancies, because it was so close. It's something that a major accomplishment to even come that close, but we needed to win if we got the votes. We cannot sit back and let this just go unless if it's not correct. And that's why I'm glad that you guys are pushing that Kimberly Ellis' side and the people that she's hired, and they have some resources, are pushing this all the way through to go the last mile to see if it was an honest election or not. Absolutely right.
Absolutely. And the idea of this fair election, this whole fair election thing has really been a problem for Democrats. You mentioned the national level. What's going on right now with the DNC lawsuit?
Yeah.
There's Bernie Sanders. So there's a class action lawsuit because the DNC is being sued because they weren't even-handed and they weren't impartial.
Right.
And they put the thumb on the scale for Hillary Clinton. And what is that? What are the DNC lawyers saying? He's saying, well, that's fine. We can select our candidates if we want to. Our charter is only, we don't really have to adhere to our charter because, so they're coming out and saying that, yeah, we can do whatever we want, and it's.
Yeah, they're claiming the Democratic Party is a private organization, therefore it has private rules. You can do whatever it wants. But just as you cannot discriminate in a restaurant owner cannot prevent someone from dining there if the person is African American or Latino, and on that basis or their religion, they cannot keep them out because the restaurant that's private is still dealing with the public. It has a major public influence and a public activity in selling food to the public. So in the same way, the Democratic Party is a public entity in the sense that it exists mostly in the public. Am I right? It may be a private organization, but it exists. Its existence, its reasons for existence, is to influence the public policies, the public nation itself. So in that sense, it needs to be a democratic party, like the name says it should be. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. But they're still, they're still talking out of both sides of their mouths. They're pretending to be. They talk about unity and they talk about inclusion, but when the rubber hits the road, it's always the other way around. It's always
Yes.
sketchy election results, questionable this or it's always got to be something. So
it's happened so much in recent history, and we've got to clean up the act, or we shouldn't even call it the Democratic Party. The party itself is going to fall apart because it'll lose its progressive wing, which is the heart and soul of the party right now. The only part of the party that can actually rebuild this party is the progressive wing. The Bernie Sanders, social justice, equal opportunity, single-payer health care, education being a human right. That's the wing of the party which is truly democratic, which can bring back the heart and soul and vision of the party, the vision that Franklin Roosevelt gave us a long time ago. We helped him get that vision. He gave it back to us. He led on it, and we accomplished the New Deal. We need a new 21st century Green New Deal, environmental New Deal that can create new jobs with justice, and that's what the party should be about. Let me just go ask you folks to also talk about, especially those of you involved with Our Revolution, that movement that would be Yoshi Yamanaka especially. And Lucio, are you also involved with Our Revolution?
Yeah, I've been involved with them.
Tell us a little bit. Let's Yosh start off on this. Yosh, tell us a bit about Our Revolution, its goals, its principles, etc., and what it's trying to do specifically.
Sure. Actually, I should probably hang up and let other people from Our Revolution call in and give their input. But I'll just briefly recap. Our Revolution is basically an outgrowth of Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign, and we are committed to progressive policies such as single payer and clean money. And we've been meeting in Long Beach at various locations for about a year now. And we've been making good progress. We think that we have pushed Nanette Barragan to win her seat, or in Lucio's district, Compton, North Long Beach, and San Pedro.
She's a new congressperson. She's a congressperson from that district, right?
Yeah. Yes, she ran against a fairly well-entrenched Democratic congressperson who is well known and was favored to win. But we put boots on the ground, knocked on doors, and she pulled an upset. And she's now one of the most, she's probably the most progressive newcomer to Congress.
That's pretty inspiring, Yosh. That's pretty inspiring that you could help do that with Our Revolution folks on the ground.
Right. Anyway, Peter, thank you.
My pleasure.
I'm gonna ring off and let other people call in.
And if anyone out in the audience would like to call in, you can be part of, whether you're part of Our Revolution or part of this whole movement or not. If you're just a regular audience member, call in, please, and I'll put you on the conference call so we can all have a discourse here, public discourse on what true democracy really is and should be. So go ahead and call it 562-234-3319. Area code 562-234-3319. Okay, John, whoever else is on the line, go right ahead. Say what you'd like to say on anything that's related to these topics. Oh, there's a call coming in. Let me pick that one up too for a minute, guys. And put that person. Good evening. Good evening, here with Economic and Social Justice with Peter Matthews.
Scott, I think you know me.
Hey, Brian. How are you?
I was at the convention. I have some first-hand observations there.
Yes, please share them with us.
At this point,
yes,
in this show.
This is a very good point. We've got 2 or 3 other people. So go right ahead and tell us your impressions of what happened.
Hey, Peter, why don't you tell Brian who you have on now with you also?
See that? What's that?
Peter, tell yourself on here right now. Okay. Other delegates that were up there with Brian.
That's right. That's right. We've got Julian Berger and we've got Lucio. So go right ahead. Let's talk to each other and talk to the audience as well.
Good. I can turn my volume sound down. Thanks.
Okay. You're breaking up, Brian. Speak up again.
I'm not saying anything. Who's first?
Let's have Brian since he just came in. Go right ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. I already had a turn.
Okay. Well, my observations are mainly about the Sunday session, of course, because most of the rest of it went pretty much, I don't know if it's according to plan, but it was in good order and seemed, to be performed according to proper procedures, Robert's rules and all those sorts of things. But I'd have to kind of describe the term dumpster fire to what the Sunday session became eventually. I wrote this up actually, and I don't know if we got time to talk about it, but I'll refer to my notes here and maybe say some things verbatim, because a lot happened pretty quickly, and when things get out of hand, it's hard to remember what the sequence was. So anyway, the general session started out basically with the reports. Well, it started an hour late. That's one thing. I had already been standing for almost an hour at one of the microphones, ready to take my turn if the need arose, and so I was actually on my feet for 3 consecutive hours, and my knees just about gave out. I never did get a chance to speak to what I wanted to speak to. Anyway, one of the things is there was no agenda for the meeting. There was no printed agenda, so there was no way to tell whether they were following any agenda. One thing that was a little disconcerting. Some of the normal things is they honored the dead. The dead California Democrats who had died, although there was enough room to show all of them. But as I found out later, the ones who were party leaders of some sort. And a good talk from Tom Steyer. And then the committee reports, and those went in appropriate order. I was impressed. The Credentials Committee presented their report. The Rules Committee presented their report as to what these committees had met the prior day. And I myself was at the Rules Committee because I had an amendment which I had proposed to there. And so when I got to that committee, I was allowed to speak in favor of my proposal. There were quite a few proposals, some about the change. There was a group of them about changes in the endorsement process, and there were several that had been submitted in regards to the ADEM, the Assembly District Election meetings, and how those operate. So those were sort of grouped on the agenda of the committee meeting. I'm straying, I know, but to give you the good news of the things that did go orderly. But none of the rules changes were ruled on. They were all parceled out and passed along to subcommittees of the Rules Committee to be dealt with later. And I suppose it'll be sliced and diced, and we won't see that sausage being made. But anyway, they did conduct their business, and so on Sunday, the Rules Committee presented the report. Now, the Resolutions Committee, after that, also submitted their report, and that included actually presenting several resolutions that they had decided to bring to the floor. And so they were discussed, and they were adopted or rejected, and one of them was amended a couple of times. And this all seemed to be going according to order. And I assumed that the same thing would happen with the election, that there would be an election committee, and they would present the results of the election, and then we would ratify it as we had with the reports of the other committees. But instead, what started happening is that John Burton, the current chair, made some extemporaneous remarks that there was some discussion going on between the two candidates for chair, which probably didn't mention that was contentious and a close race. So he said, well, they're busy conferring and talking about reviewing or verifying that somehow. And so he seemed to think that they'd agreed on doing that. And at one point he suggested that's what was going to happen, and that was apparently met with some positive.
And I'm sorry, Brian, you didn't come out. You broke up for a minute. So you said John Burton thought that was going to happen. What was that? The talking between the two camps? What exactly was going to happen?
He said that the two camps had been discussing some method of doing a review or or verifying the vote count.
Verifying the vote count. Okay, that's right.
You're right, verifying the vote count. But at this point, or about that point, many members started raising point of order and making other motions, and this got rather chaotic because more than one person was speaking up, and most of these were summarily ruled out of order. And but at one point, a challenge was raised, a challenge to the chair's ruling, which I guess is within Robert's rules. And to his credit, I would say Mr. Burton, he entertained the challenge. In fact, he said there's a challenge to the, I don't know if challenge is a word, but anyway, objection to the ruling of the chair. And he entertained the challenge, he acknowledged it, and he went so far as to call for aye votes, which it seemed to be that the majority on the floor did vote aye to support the challenge to the chair's ruling.
Okay.
But then Mr. Burton seemed to have a bit of a memory lapse because he never called for nay votes. So as far as I know, that challenge to the ruling of the chair is still open. I'd be wrong about that. Anyway, there were other point of order calls, and they were all ignored. And as he used his usual salty language to, complain about the hubbub, the uproar. I won't quote him.
I know John Burton. I've spoken to him personally.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's known to pull no punches. I think he'll tell anybody that.
Yeah. Go right ahead.
It would take a rolling weight to put it mildly. What happened is, interestingly enough, that sometimes later, controller Hillary Crosby took the stage again. Earlier, she had already given her farewell address because she's retiring.
Right.
But she took the stage and she made some, I thought, rather apt remarks, and they were personal and poignant. They were extemporaneous. She realized there's quite a rift here, on both sides. So she made some remarks about reconciliation of our party. And in fact, she made reference to a Truth and Reconciliation, and specifically cited the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa.
Right, a few years ago.
What had to go on to heal some of the horrible wounds that, it's a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, I don't think any of us on either side were put in prison for 27 years.
No, not like Nelson Mandela, no.
Or,
But the schism is real. The schism.
Killed, as far as I know, but there's very, very deep emotional scars and separations going on here. So it was, emotionally, it resonated.
Yes.
And so the thing is, after saying that, she suggested an audit of the election results.
Okay.
And she volunteered to conduct that audit. And
Very
she
nice.
promised to apply her skill and her experience as a professional auditor to ensure that the audit would be done fairly.
And that's what's going on right now, right, Brian? That's what's going on today, tomorrow.
Yes, I don't know if it's completed yet. It started on Tuesday.
Right.
Anyway, Hillary Crosby assured us that there exists a sufficient paper trail to ascertain, a valid count.
Right.
And I was very confident that was a good idea. I was relieved,
Yes.
And that's some of the same things that I would have said or suggested. Now, her suggestion was not presented as a motion.
Okay.
But it was met with what I perceive to be a preponderantly positive response of applause from the body of the meeting.
Right.
Once again, is that official? I don't know. It's a promise, apparently.
Right.
It's clear that the audit would happen. It was clear at that point, and indeed it has happened.
Yes.
Because later, Chairman Burton, when he took the stage again, he confirmed that he and the other parties involved had agreed to that process. And so he said the audit was going to happen. So we had promises both from the outgoing controller and the outgoing chairman that the audit would take place. I was satisfied that our concerns had been met,
Okay.
And although there was no official motion to it, it seemed clear to me that the sense of the body is that we would ratify the results after they had been audited and possibly adjusted. That was my understanding, and that may well have been the understanding of most of the people in the pink shirts, the Kimberly Ellis group.
Okay.
But it seemed we'd already been tricked, actually. because shortly after that, Chairman Burton proceeded to present the results of the election, the Saturday night.
Oh, as if it was confirmed without the audit.
Right, exactly, as if they were final results.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right at all. If they're willing to have an audit, that means there's a question about the final results. That's why they had the audit. They should wait till the audit is over.
Exactly. Yeah, and well, as it turned out, there was also one race that at that point, as far as I knew, hadn't been decided because the election for secretary, neither candidate had gotten half, and so there was a runoff election, which we voted on Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been there since 7:30 in the morning because we came for that, and the meeting was supposed to start at 10 and started about 11.
Right.
But so as far as I know, they never did well. I never saw the runoff total for the office of the secretary, and if I recall correctly, when they at one point there was a slide that was displayed on screen, and it listed the offices and who was the winner, but under secretary it said that they were under runoff. So I don't know if the actual vote totals, I don't know if the vote totals were ever shown for any of them, just the winners.
Yeah.
But a lot was going on at that point, and as I said, a lot of us wore pink shirts,
So you're actually, let me just kind of try to tie this together. You're kind of suggesting that there were procedural problems in this whole democratic process of choosing the officers. There was a procedural errors or procedural irregularities. It wasn't quite done the way it should be done, and that left things up in the air.
That way to me.
You know. And maybe to other people as well.
When you think something's not being done according to the rules,
That's
you
right.
find out that they are. I've done a lot of research as to how the delegates are selected, and it's all done according to the rules.
Yes.
They screw you legally.
Okay, so that let me tie in a little political science and political theory here. There's a word called legitimacy in politics, the study of politics. Legitimacy.
Yes.
It means the authority to use power because of rightness. If you don't have the authority to use power, it's because people don't feel that you're a legitimate authority. So if the party has not followed the rules, or there's a perception that has not followed the proper rules, it'll lose legitimacy in the eyes of the party members and the public itself. So that's a real problem for the Democratic Party of California if this continues. Something has to be done to resolve that illegitimacy question or challenge. Otherwise, the party will split. It'll start splintering apart and falling apart. And one more thing I want to talk about before we're almost out of time here, but you guys have brought in so much rich material, and that is, what is the purpose of the California Democratic Party? Isn't it here supposed to be the ideals of the party are to serve the working Americans, the working middle class, the working poor, those who want an opportunity to be able to climb the ladder and realize the American dream? Wasn't the party based on it in the New Deal under President Roosevelt? That was the modern Democratic Party, right? It was built for that purpose.
Yes.
To create opportunity.
That aside, my concern is whether they know how to conduct their own business and constitute their own convention in a democratic fashion.
Well, obviously, this time it seems like they're not ready for it. Let me respond to that if you don't mind. You're looking at the procedural democracy. We call it procedural democracy in politics, in the political science. Procedural democracy, it was very much in question that it wasn't followed. It looks from what you guys have been telling me, what you're telling me, Brian. It wasn't followed. There's some question as to whether it was actually the procedures were followed properly. That's a legitimacy problem, but also there's a substantive problem. It's called substantive democracy, and that's the real intangible social and economic benefits that people can win by struggling for those changes, for the 8-hour workday, the 40-hour work week, the right to unionize, the right to have clean water, clean air, free tuition, the right to have universal single payer. Those are substantive democratic values that have to be also achieved. So my question is, what has the California Democratic Party been doing all of these decades to be able to achieve those social justice substances? It hasn't been doing much, as far as I can see. And it seems to me like what happened in Sacramento is not very encouraging, right?
Yeah, well, they move towards it. The platform, for example, includes single payer. The problem is that the elected officials who put a D after their name do not vote that way.
And that goes back to my book, Dollar Democracy with Liberty and Justice for Some, How to Reclaim the American Dream for All. The problem is the money in politics, excuse me, that has been buying and purchasing many of these elected officials' votes. Not directly, not in exchange quid pro quo, because that's illegal, that's bribery, but in understanding that, look, if I get a lot of money from the oil companies, I can't vote to put a moratorium on fracking. At least I can abstain. That way I don't hurt the oil companies. You see, it doesn't seem like I'm voting against the moratorium, but I'm not for it either. I'm abstaining. This is the kind of double dealing, talk through two sides of the mouth, that both political parties, Republican and Democrat, have been doing with corporate influence. And that's what Bernie Sanders and people who are progressive like Kimberly Ellis and you folks have been trying to change in the party. Am I right?
Right, that's right, absolutely.
So we can win some of these substantive gains, the American dream back again for the American people, 99% of us, who are really the foundation of America. That's what I would suggest. And I think you guys are doing a tremendous job, have done a tremendous job going to Sacramento, keeping the struggle up. You were struggling way before Sacramento, and you'll be struggling and fighting for justice even after Sacramento, and for justice within the Democratic Party as well. So I think we're almost, what time is it exactly? Let me put my glasses on because I really can't see this time. 8:50, we got 4 minutes left here. 4 minutes. Let's take a little wrap-up session here with anyone who's on the line. Please speak up, and if someone wants to call in, you can still call in on 562-234-3319. We have 5 minutes left, so let's hear from each of the people who want to talk a bit and kind of wrap it up. Take about 30-40 seconds to wrap up your thoughts, okay? If you don't mind. Whoever would like to start. We can start with Julian Berger if he's still on there. Julian there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, buddy. How about some wrap-up?
Yeah, so the thing is, this is actually, I thought it was one of the best conventions we've had in a while, because there actually was competition for offices. Generally, when these offices come up, there's no competition. It's like handing off a baton in a relay, and it's pretty old.
Yeah.
And I was glad to see that there was competition. The problem is, there are people that don't like competition in the Democratic Party.
There you go. Now you you hit the nail on the head right there.
We need to hand the baton off. You know what I mean? That's the right way to do it. Okay, I don't think so.
No.
And I think we're a better party for it. But just to say, basically, that Kimberly Ellis did a fantastic job. That she took losers by 62 votes, because this whole process was set up to favor Eric Bauman. Because there's 1,200 appointed or so appointed delegates, right, Brian?
1,200.
Okay, and 1,200.
Democratic Central Committee, he wouldn't dare vote against them. 94% of them voted to endorse him. You know, what a joke.
Look at that. 94% of the appointed delegates voted to endorse him.
So he was pretty blown away that he only lost by 16 votes.
Well, he should be.
You know,
Yes. And if anyone wants to get to the bottom of this as to who really won, it should be him. He should have an accurate count. We should demand an accurate count. Eric Bauman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is curious. So he was on a first name basis of all these elected officials, 100 people. He could call these people up and say, I need your delegates over. And only
on the payroll of one of them. On the payroll of one of them.
Right. Exactly.
And yet Kimberly won half the votes, despite those odds.
Right. We're talking about Kimberly Ellis did a fantastic job, and I congratulate her, even if she loses by 62 or some odd votes.
Okay. Keep in mind that 63 votes means a swing of 30 would do it. Nancy Pelosi alone has 35 appointees.
Look at that.
Right.
I would say it was a matter of one thumb on the scale away from a win.
So this is not democracy. It's not democracy when half the delegates are appointed by elite public officials that are elected and lobbyists sponsored. And you get half the delegates appointed and half of them are elected. That is not really democracy.
It's less than half.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little less than half, correct. But it's a very large number, maybe 40%.
Is when you
there are some that are kind of in between. Put it this way, it's well said by George Orwell in Animal Farm. All of us are equal, but some of us are more equal than others.
There you go. There you go.
That's how it works at the CDP.
And that has to be changed. That has to be changed, as you folks know, and we all know that. So who's the next person like to summarize?
Yeah, I'd just like to add that I also, I'm really proud of Kimberly Ellis, and I'm really proud, to have participated. I'm new to the party. I came in with Bernie Sanders, and I almost left the party, but I came back because I wanted to help, people like, Brian, people like Julian, people who have been in this struggle for a while, so I'm glad to do it.
Excellent. Good job.
I just want to say that I'm really proud to be part of it. I think all of Kimberly's people and all the people that I met did a really amazing job. We got so close. And also, a lot of these hate ends, they serve a 2-year term, so we're still going to be here for the next year, and we're going to, this was a learning experience, and we just got to go forward, and there's still energy behind this, so
very good.
We just have to keep going.
Excellent. Keep up the fight. Just got to keep it up. Who's next? Is there someone else left there on the line?
There is a fight in the 64-day.
Yes. Anyone else like to say a word for about 15 seconds so we can wrap it up here? It's after 9 o'clock already. Good job.
Just the last thing I'd say is if the establishment wing of the CDP has their eyes halfway open, they saw half of the convention walk out, and if they think about it, they know that means we know how to organize and we know how to get votes. And anytime they're up for something that they want to have happen, we have the power to bring the votes that will make the difference for them, and we have the power to walk away with them.
That's right.
We don't feel like we're being considered.
Very well put. And the grassroots
to be well warned, regardless how the audit comes out.
And you folks of the grassroots have proven that the grassroots is the foundation of everything. And that's what the party needs to understand and go back to that once again. And not just be trying to play the old games that didn't work for the Democratic Party or for the Republican Party or for the country. So thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies, whoever's there listening or talking. We'd like to have you folks on the next weekend, by the way, next week on Thursday night at the same time, same place on this YouTube channel, Peter Matthews 11 or Peter Matthews 11, live streaming, where our guests are going to be 2 people from Oklahoma and St. Louis. One of them is actually a homeless organizer for the homelessness issue of fighting for the rights for people who are homeless, and through public policy and also through private donations and charities, but mostly through public policy. Michael Tiffany and a woman named Tina Crawford, that's her name, Tina Crawford, who herself has actually been homeless or actually is still homeless, will be experiences on life on the street. People to get out of homelessness. So we'll talk about the homelessness issue next week. Okay, so please, folks, tune in at 8 o'clock tomorrow on Thursday, 1 week from now, and then you can call in at 8:15 to take part in the discussion. Thank you very much, folks who came on. You're our guests, and also the people out in the audience. Appreciate it, and have a good night tonight. And keep up the struggle for social and economic justice. Never give up. Never, never, never give up. Thank you so much.
Never,
good night.
Never.
Okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much.
Okay.